Yesterday on Hello Houston, Harris County Judge Lina Hidalgo joined us to discuss her very public comments on and Facebook post calling on Democratic voters to reject former Mayor Annise Parker as a candidate for the Harris County Judge position. On Facebook, Hidalgo wrote, she, being Annise Parker, will follow John Whitmire's playbook, capitulating to Donald Trump and Greg Abbott. Annise Parker is Kim Og 2.0. I will allow the other viable candidate to continue to make herself known. We do not need another John Whitmire, another Kim Og, etc. There is another option in our Democratic primary for county judge. Joining us now is former Houston Mayor Annise Parker. And if you would like to join the conversation, if you have comments or question, you can call or text 713-440-8870.
Well, welcome to Hello Houston, Mayor.
Glad to be here, and I'm all ready for Christmas. I'm just saying.
Like I said, moms do it. Moms do it best.
And I'm about to be a grandmother for the 7th time next week.
Wow. Congratulations.
So I had to get ready early.
Well, is your grandbaby maybe going to be born on Christmas Day?
23rd. You know, they schedule them these days.
Yeah,
so.
okay. Oh.
You know, Mayor Parker, yesterday Judge Hidalgo was very clear right here on Hello Houston and said she is trying to be as transparent as possible to the Democratic voters about your political history. Do you represent core Democratic values?
I have been a Democrat my entire adult life. I have been I'm a former Democratic precinct chair and precinct judge in 34. I've attended 3 national conventions and multiple state conventions. I have never voted in anything but a Democratic primary, and I have consistently supported the Democratic ticket, and I'm a sustaining member of the Harris County Democratic Party with my dollars. So I do want to correct something that she said. I have actually 2 opponents on the Democratic ticket, so she's wrong there too.
So she said that you were open about voting for Ed Emmett, a Republican.
Yes, I have.
So when you say you're Democratic, you did
support
vote for
the
a
party.
Republican.
And I support the activities of the party. And actually, I've been a national speaker. I've spoken to the California Democratic Party in convention. I've spoken to multiple state parties. I support democratic values in the Democratic Party. That doesn't mean that the Democratic candidate is always the best candidate in a race. And the particular reason that I think judges all go, she has a right to be angry with me. I jumped out in June. I was the first candidate to announce in either party for county judge. She hadn't made up her mind. I didn't care. I want this position. I know I can do this position. I believe I'm the best person for this position, so I jumped out. I understand. I never liked it when somebody ran against me. Might have hurt my feelings. Didn't usually talk about it, but I understand. It's okay.
Your reaction when you first saw the Facebook post, first of all, did you know it was coming? And then when you saw it, what was your initial reaction to it? There was a lot there.
I actually, frankly, didn't pay much attention to it. She's not one of my opponents, and there are a lot of things. There's nothing in there that was new. She referred to an interview I did 4 years ago. There's no new information here.
Yeah. One thing I
don't understand.
One thing I want to clarify, in the conversation we had with her yesterday, it may have been misleading. She was talking about election deniers. And
I am not an election denier.
So
absolutely.
Address what you heard in your reaction.
Oh, I did listen yesterday, and she was talking about her opponent, Miller.
Alex,
excuse me, went blank. Alex DeMorel, Miller being an election denier. But the way she said it, it sounded like I was an election denier or I was supporting Alex Miller. Neither of which was the case.
So Joe Biden won fair and square in 2020.
There was no, I'm going to step back up. There is always possibility of small-scale mistakes and fraud. But when you consider the fact that the Republican Party has spent the last 10 years trying to find massive fraud, it just doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. And yes, Joe Biden won fair and square, and frankly, I think Donald Trump, to my chagrin, won fair and square.
So no.
I spent this last election day in Wisconsin working for Tammy Baldwin, one of the most liberal Democrats in the United States Senate. Tammy Baldwin carried Wisconsin, and so did Donald Trump. I'm still scratching my head, but I'm just glad that my candidate carried Wisconsin.
So, to you, what is the line between capitulating and bipartisanship?
Well, every one of us has, personal beliefs and standards, and you should always be true to yourself. I have never backed down on the issue of support of the LGBTQ community. I've been a champion for labor. I've been a champion for immigrant rights. But there are stupid fights, and then there is good trouble, as John Lewis used to say. And I think each one of us has to make that determination. I'm not a big believer in going down with the ship just to make try to score political points. If there is no way to win, let's figure out how to pull something that is progress out of the ashes. That's always but the interesting thing to me is that I don't have to reintroduce myself to the voters of Houston. I was in office for 18 years. I'm the same person I was as a council member, same person I was as controller, same person I was as mayor. If you liked the work I did then, you're going to like the work I do as county judge. My passion has always been local government, and there is no one who could have run for this position that is as experienced in local government and has the skill set that I have. There's no one, whether they're in the race with me now or not, there's no one comparable.
Well,
It's interesting you mentioned stupid fights because you did endorse Kim Ogg. And during that time, Kim Ogg later on went after Hidalgo's chief of staff. And those charges were dismissed. So talk to me about that.
I am not in any way responsible for what Kim Ogg does or says. I've known Kim Ogg for a very long time, and she was a Republican when she first ran for office. She switched parties to run as a Democrat for for district attorney, and the Democrats embraced her. As far as I'm concerned, Kim Ogg, returned to her roots when she got frustrated with the Democratic Party. Not responsible for that. Did I actively support her in her race? Virtually every Democrat in Harris County supported her in her first race. The vast majority of Democrats supported her in her second race because she won again. By the time she was in her third race, she was part of my portfolio as the CEO of an organization called LGBT Victory Fund. I spent 7 years after I left office working for a nonpartisan PAC, and the very same ballot that I was out working for Kim Ogg, I worked just as hard for Molly Cook, Lauren Ashley Simmons, and Jolanda Jones. But no one wants to talk about the fact that I sent 100 personal dear neighbor postcards for Molly Cook. The fact that I was out stumping for Kim Ogg, it was my job. Now I would clearly, if I was offended by anything that they had done, that I had the personal choice not to weigh in. But they were literally in my portfolio as the CEO of this organization that endorsed them. When I take on a job, I intend to do it, and I do it as best as I can.
and there's no question that you were a good mayor. I will say that.
Thank you.
And a great comptroller.
Thank you.
But the landscape is
I think I was a really good council member, too.
and council member, and you were there in 1988 taking care of our people that had AIDS, and you were a great champion for HIV care. So I don't doubt any of that. But the landscape has changed since you have held public office. We've had crosswalks painted over. Cities have seen the National Guard go in. Democratic mayors have been somehow forced to talk to Republican counterparts and support them in their reelection campaign fundraising, as in John Whitmire going to Dan Crenshaw's fundraiser. How will you handle those new challenges? Can you push back on Greg Abbott?
Oh, absolutely. And I have pushed back on Greg Abbott. But and Ted Cruz, but
Like you say, pick your battles.
You have to pick your battles. But I'm going to say that, first of all, as mayor, I was in a publicly and overtly and legally nonpartisan position. And as mayor, your first responsibility is to make sure that your constituents are protected in any way possible. I come to the county judge's position in the same way. I have to go through a Democratic primary. I'm a Democrat. I've always been a Democrat. And that's going to cause me challenges when I run next November as the nominee for the Democratic Party. I'm going to have to be able to talk to Republicans. But our first responsibility is to our constituents, our state, our nation. It is not first responsibility to our party. Now, let's talk about something like the rainbow crosswalks. That's my neighborhood. I drive over those rainbow crosswalks every time I come out of on Taft Street, come out of the neighborhood. And if you look at all of the other Democratic mayors, the big cities in Texas have Democratic mayors. They all had rainbow crosswalks. They've all had to take the rainbow crosswalks down. It was going to happen. They've all had to do it. Now, did it have to happen on the first day? No. Should it have happened like a sneak attack in the middle of the night? No, that's just stupid politics. What I would have done, I would have immediately proclaimed a banner district, which is in the power of the mayor along Lower Westheimer. There used to be a banner district, and I'd put a rainbow flag on every one of those light poles up and down Lower Westheimer. 4 rainbows in the crosswalk gone, 1,000 rainbows decorating the neighborhood. That's how you make good trouble and not stupid fights.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask you a little bit. We want to get to the calls too. We are speaking with Annise Parker, former mayor and currently a candidate for county judge. And our number here is 713-440-8870. Before I grab this call, though, I'm interested in the internal battling, the internal fighting we're seeing within the Democratic Party. And for folks who think that is so unique and odd, I think, city in which there is kind of a monolith party running it, they tend to fall to sides in it. If you look at Chicago, there's more conservative, more liberal Democrats. Houston may have the same thing going on. What's your take on what's happening in the party? It is
no different than we've had for decades. When I first got involved in Democratic Party politics, there were the Billy Carr Democrats on the far left, and then there were the centrist Democrats, and there were some right-wing Democrats. And it's not any different in the Republican Party, although right now the MAGAs have pretty much pushed out the traditional Republicans. But I can remember when the Tea Party came in, and there was a lot of pearl clutching from traditional Republicans. My mom was a Tea Party Republican. She sent her tea bag to Washington, and then the Tea Party came in. And now the MAGAs have come in. This is just a normal part of politics. If you're passionate about government, if you're passionate about who represents you, you're going to bring that passion to whichever party affiliation you have. And that's just a part of the process.
So what about somebody that would say Judge Hidalgo is passionate about the Democratic Party and calling you out on the lack of follow through for the Democratic core values?
I don't know that she mentioned any Democratic core values. I think that I absolutely represent the core values of the Democratic Party. The fact that I've already received endorsements from labor, the fact that I have close ties in the immigrant community, the fact that my highest priority when I was working, when I was a mayor, or one of my highest priorities was working on affordable housing and homelessness. I wish there was a checkoff list that we could actually have a real conversation, but it's easy to say, oh, you don't represent the core values. My core values have been on display in public in Houston for decades.
If you slip on those headphones in front of you, the number here is 713-440-8870. We have Kyle on the line from Spring. Kyle, what's on your mind?
Oh, hi there. Thanks for taking my call, and it's an honor to be speaking with the former mayor of our great city. My question is this. We've been talking, or you all have been talking a lot about how former mayor is aligned perfectly with Democratic core values, and that's been the case. And one would be hard put to suggest that you're anything other than a card-carrying Democrat. But my question is, these days, it seems like what constitutes core values for Democrats is evolving. London looks at the recent mayoral election in New York, and as evidence that sort of younger voters may be thinking of Democrats as something different than what they once were. And my question is, do you see yourself as aligning, evolving, or with these values, or do you still consider yourself a Democrat in the same way that you have been throughout your career?
Kyle, thank you for your call.
That's a really interesting and thoughtful question, and thank you. And I will tell you that I've been a Democrat long enough to remember when the party was not supportive of gay marriage. And Democrats weren't particularly fast to come around on any LGBT issues. They weren't fast to come around. They were a lot faster than the Republicans, but not fast to come around on HIV issues. I've also been around long enough to remember when, it used to be possible to have a thoughtful conversation about immigration reform on both sides of the aisle, and it was often Democrats who were playing catch up, and the Republicans were, we need a Bracero program because we need our crops picked. The political winds change, issues change, and while I have never voted anything but a Democratic primary, I will make a public confession right here that the first vote I ever cast as an 18-year-old was for an independent party candidate because I hadn't figured out where I wanted to land yet. But so we all grow and evolve over time. Clearly, what has changed fundamentally in politics is the importance of social media and the amount of time we spend in our own echo chambers, hearing our thoughts reflected back to each other. And that is something that I have tried very hard not to allow happen. And the benefit, the benefit of the 7 years I spent, I left my job at the end of 2024, but the 7 years I spent running the LGBT Victory Fund, it's a Washington-based PAC focused solely on electing LGBT candidates across the country, every level of the ballot, every part of the country. And most of the candidates that we worked with, they're entry-level candidates. School board, mosquito control board, water board, far left of the Democratic Party, many of them, a handful of moderate Republicans, although they're pretty much extinct. And I had a really up-close and personal look at the changes within the Democratic Party. And one of the reasons that I'm back in the race, I never intended to run for office again. I certainly didn't intend when I left my job. I thought I'd retire. But I got to see politics at the ground level where it still really works. Passionate people wanting to serve their community. I don't think it works in Austin any longer, and I certainly don't think it works in D.C., but I think it still works at the local level. And I think voters most are hungry for authenticity, integrity, honesty, and a willingness to engage.
713-440-8870. Jane is on the line from Fort Bend. Jane, what's on your mind?
Hi, guys. Thanks so much for taking my call. Mayor Parker, I have a question. I remember some concerns that were in Third Ward about land that was earmarked for low-income housing that somehow on your watch ended up going to high-rises. I'd like you to speak to that. Because that was right next to the medical center. It would have been a great fit.
I think you may be wrong on the timing of that. The last big thing I did in the Third Ward was the overhaul of the Emancipation Park, which is about to have another big expansion. The Midtown Management District was engaged on my watch and after in acquiring land, but unfortunately, and I'll acknowledge this, they didn't do much with the land. So these like the headquarters mid-rise building that they put it came after my time, and frankly, I think it was a huge waste of money that was supposed to go to preservation of housing in the community. I think, in fact, I think the guys are later. You guys are going to be talking a little bit later about a new plan for what to do with Midtown.
Midtown folks are standing outside the studio right now.
Yeah.
And we did receive some YouTube comments. Frontline Realtor says, I'm sorry, but if I was to vote in Harris County, the Harris County judge election, you would absolutely need to reintroduce yourself because I didn't live in Texas when you were in office, nor do I know your work.
Actually, when I go out on the stump, I do say that there's about 1 million people in Harris County who weren't old enough to vote. A lot of them know me. Houston's the dominant, it dominates the whole media market. But there's about 1 million people who either weren't old enough or weren't living here when I was last in office. And that's why I'm raising a lot of money for my campaign and I'm going to do a full-blown reintroduction of myself to Democratic primary voters.
One more YouTube comment from Noah. Woo! She got me fired up about them banners. Let's go. Can we petition the mayor for that course of action?
We should. There's always a way to make your position and your values known. But I mean, sometimes you just have to the train's going to run over me. I get to pick which direction it hits me. And this is one of those situations where the train was going to run over it, and the mayor could not afford to lose those highway dollars. Now, instead of being mad at the mayor, we should be furious at Greg Abbott for threatening us over something so stupid, and to use a false argument that these road markings, that painted crosswalks are somehow dangerous. They actually make crosswalks safer because people stop and notice them. And it was at Lubbock, the Buddy Holly crosswalk has to come down. Apparently, really.
Yeah. Well, maybe we'll get them back. Who knows?
Former Houston Mayor Annise Parker and Harris County Judge candidate, thank you for joining us today on Hello Houston.
Thank you so much. Good to see you.
Yep, glad to be back.